Dan Abrams knows the law. He's become America's best-known legal analyst, runs the Top Live Legal TV network, and is chief legal correspondent for ABC News. This is the Dan Abrams Show on POTUS, where politics meets the law.
Hey, everyone, welcome to the show. In the last couple of hours, President Biden announced that April 19th will now be the deadline for making all U.S. adults eligible for the COVID vaccine. And that's a big deal. Right? It's a big deal to be able to move up the date. It's a big deal to be able to get everyone vaccinated, which is terrific. I'm going to be talking about this topic in a moment. I want to tell you guys a personal story which got me thinking about this, which is that my son is on a soccer league, right? And they have to find fields to play on. And they've got a field that is owned by the state that is going to be their home field in soccer. And the field has a no parental watching. No one's allowed to watch. No spectators are allowed at this field. And when I heard that for half the games my son plays this season, I can't watch, I thought to myself, it's time for us to start balancing better the need for safety with the reality that things are getting a lot better and that there really isn't evidence of major risk in kids. I mean, again, when you talk about the soccer thing, why not just mandate all parents have to stay 10 feet away from each other? We're outdoors. This isn't indoors. No. And it's one of the reasons that you get these sort of overreach responses, right, from others, which is open everything up, get rid of masks, this and that. Again, it's always about the balance. There's no absolutes on this thing. I think sometimes the scientists are overly cautious, and I think that there's no question that some politicians have been overly reckless. But we're very close to being in a very good place. And I'll tell you one of the things that has been one of my pet peeves and related to this topic, and that is about schools. Now, I've been lucky. My son has been almost all in-person school for the year. Now, he was at home for the summer, but then his school was pretty aggressive in bringing kids back to school, which was surprising and I think a good thing. But you now have a bipartisan group of governors who are trying to get students back into classrooms, and they're getting resistance from the unions. There's also bureaucratic issues. Good article on this from a couple days ago in the New York Times. Fed up with remote learning, governors make a push to reopen schools. And you've got Governor DeWine from Ohio, Washington, Jay Inslee, Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker. They're all part of a bipartisan group of governors who are moving forward and trying to buck some of the union resistance. And the key is follow the science, right? Follow the science. The evidence has shown that there is little indication that there are mass problems with kids at school. And yet, according to a school reopening tracker created by the American Enterprise Institute, just 7% of more than 8,000 districts were operating, 7% of more than 8,000 districts were operating fully remotely on March 22nd, and that's the lowest that the tracker's been. 41% of districts were offering full-time in-person instruction. Still below 50%, right? And the governors will tell you, these governors who are part of this, that there's little evidence that virus transmission in schools, if particular measures are followed, is a real risk. And kids need to be going back to school. Even in areas where cases are increasing, like Michigan, some schools have had to revert to remote learning. Okay, temporarily. Get that. In Ohio, where they're pushing this, and nearly half the students were in districts that were fully remote at the beginning of 2021, by March 1, that number was down to 4%. Good for them. Washington and Massachusetts, they've seen the same sort of thing. The key becomes making sure that the teachers are vaccinated. Not just the teachers, school employees. That's it. It's not hard. Considering, even as of 2 months ago, the fact that vaccines were available. And I'm just reading through, again, this article, and I'm going to get to something else in a minute. In Massachusetts, Mr. Baker, a Republican, requiring that elementary and middle schools offer 5-day-a-week in-person instruction by late April. After April 5th for elementary schools, April 28th for middle schools, remote or part-time instruction will no longer count toward fulfilling a district's required instructional hours. Good. Because starting April 19th, any American who wants a vaccine will be eligible. And the reality is that what you're getting is pushback from the teachers' unions. Now, this is one of these topics where I'm going to say that, when we talk about legal topics, that's what I do for a living, right? I do legal analysis. I focus on the law. I'm a lawyer. When it comes to this topic, you guys are going to know as much about it as I do. So I have no guess. It's just going to be you guys and me. But I'm now reading from a Brookings Institute study, came out a week ago. We find that school districts with lengthier collective bargaining agreements were less likely to start the fall 2020 semester with in-person instruction, were less likely to ever open for in-person instruction during the fall semester, and spent more weeks overall in distance learning. We further find that the shorter-term union power flexes, those captured by social media posts, were associated with a higher likelihood of reopening for full in-person instruction during the fall semester. These short-term reactionary responses were not enough to slow the pressure towards reopening. Instead, it's the long-standing entrenched union power relationships captured by the length of the bargaining agreement that are associated with a slowed reopening timeline. Well, that should piss you off. The teachers' unions should not be dictating the fact that kids can't come back to school when the science doesn't back them up. And by the way, I'll be interested in hearing from some of you who are members of teachers' unions because, again, you may know more about this than I do. What about the COVID-19? This is, again, from this Brookings research. It says teachers' unions, scapegoats, or bad faith actors in COVID-19 school reopening decisions. We find that pandemic severity, as measured by the county COVID-19 hospitalization rate, had no relationship with the probability of in-person reopening. No relationship. Instead, the other strongest predictors of an in-person reopening during fall 2020 included political partisanship and demographics. And here they get nervous, right? Brookings is nervous they're going to get beat up. To be clear, we're not the only authors to document that unions, politics, and demographics matter above and beyond pandemic severity, though we're the first to show these relationships beyond the start of the fall 2020 school year. So the empirical research suggests that teachers' unions slowed fall school reopening decisions during a worldwide pandemic, and media accounts suggest their efforts continued as schools returned from winter break. And that's my concern. I get it in the fall to some degree. But once the information's coming in after the winter break, come on. Now, before I take your calls on this, I should add that there's another story out today. New York Times, as variants have spread, progress against the virus in the U.S. has stalled. Talk about how these various variants that have come up are more transmissible and potentially more deadly. Okay, I get it. That's important, right? Got to follow where the science is. But again, schools are not the place this is happening. So, I'll be curious what you guys think of this, because I got to tell you, I'm glad that my kid has been in-person school. And by the way, I have been really careful before I got vaccinated. I'm now vaccinated, but I just got the second shot 2 weeks ago. I say that because it's meaning I am now fully vaccinated. And before that, I was glad. I was one of these people staying at home, double masking when I was going out. And yet I wanted my kid to be in school because the science wasn't showing that that's where people were getting COVID. And it was important. So I'm just looking at this. What is this? This is Fauci's on CNN, right? Youth teams, Fauci saying youth team sports a bigger virus spreader than classrooms. From CNN. Thank you, Jael, for sending me that. Okay. But it can't be that outdoor sports, and it certainly can't be that the parents who are standing on the sidelines 10 feet apart from each other is the issue. And that's what got me so pissed. I mean, again, I am not someone who takes this thing lightly. But we have to have a balance here. We can't let teachers' unions dictate the science. Let's go to Missouri and Warren. Warren, how you doing? What do you got?
I have a story that's an anecdote, but a true story about youth athletic events, high school basketball in February. We are in a county adjacent to an urban county, and our varsity boys and girls went to play basketball there. None of none of the relatives or family could go because there was no people allowed. But the next day, when the JV boys and girls came out here, the place was not filled, but quite a few their parents coming 35 or 40 miles to be able to finally see their junior and varsity boys and girls play, because in this county they could come. So they were very happy to be able to come because they couldn't see their children play at all in their home. Little interesting anecdote. I don't know what side it's on.
Thank you, Warren. Appreciate it. Let's go to Steve in New Jersey. Steve, how you doing? What do you got?
Hi, good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
So I have to disagree with you a little bit. I'm sorry.
Okay. Please.
I'm a teacher,
and
I am an active union member, and I hold offices in my union. The issue is it's partly because of the lack of following protocols of the families in the community. I happen to live and work in a county that is very high right now with cases, and in a district that's very high with cases. And while there is evidence that it might not spread at school, you're still talking about a public building that may not be in the condition that it should be in to allow for proper air circulation. Certain policies that the districts put out say you can or cannot do certain things. Like we had a fight about opening windows. Opening windows allows fresh air to come in.
Right.
It was supported by many other scientists, New York Times, stuff like that.
Right.
They didn't want us opening our windows until we
Why?
finally said, this is why. Because they said that their air circulation systems did enough.
Okay, so here's the thing. So again, I get your point, particularly opening windows. It seems to me insane unless it's freezing out, that you've got to be able to open windows, because I think that there's no question in everything you see, they talk about opening windows. But the standard that you set is, well, it might not be. That can't be the decision maker here, right? I get your point about what the level. If you're in a community where there is an explosion of COVID, I get it. Temporarily, make the school remote, right? I get that. But that's a different issue.
It's not us saying, and by us I mean the union members, the teachers, whichever ESPs. Okay, it's not us saying that we don't want to come back to school. We want to come back.
Some are saying that. Some are saying that.
Well, some true, and sadly, sometimes those are the ones who are listened to by some people.
Right.
But our phrase, our motto has been only when it's safe. So I happen to work in an upper middle class district that does have newer buildings. Other districts around me do not have the newer buildings, and they were forced to go virtual because they could not meet the health standards not set by the teachers union, but set by the health department. So there's that. If it's not safe, then you shouldn't go back to school. It's again blamed on the teachers union and on the teachers.
But would you not agree with me that in a lot of let me not weight this question. I believe that in a lot of cases, it is the teachers union that are forcing various issues. And I guess my broader point would be that there can be a balance, but the teachers unions have so much power that they can just shut down these schools, and they do. Is that not a fair assessment?
I'm sorry, I have to disagree with you.
Yeah, tell me. Look, you're more involved in the teachers unions than I am. So,
yeah, no, there are so many other factors. You know, it's very easy because I have friends on both sides of the political spectrum, and this is where it comes in, where it comes down to politics. Okay, the amount of misinformation out there, the amount of twisted information out there, leads to misunderstanding and possible, I guess, decision-making that is not the most well-informed.
Yeah.
So if you are sorry, I'll let you go. What were you going to say?
No. I hear you. But thank you, Steve. Look, you provide an important perspective on this. I'm still not convinced, but I appreciate it. Let's go to Allison in New York. Allison, how you doing? What do you got?
Hey, so I'm a parent of 3 elementary school kids, and I'm in a town that's very, very red. And we've been closed. We just finally got our date for next Monday to open up full time, but we've been in hybrid this whole time. Most of the kids, I think, in town have actually been in virtual because the hybrid is just not practical for parents, particularly in our area. We have a lot of firemen and cops that just can't stay home and work, like they have to go.
Right.
And we were getting so much pushback, and it wasn't until we finally just got on and berated the school board that suddenly we had a date and a plan. But for months, we had nothing. And our teachers, who I think are lovely, but I was out in the beginning of last spring when this all started, and I'd go out for a walk and see the teachers in our neighborhood partying in their backyard, 10, 15 people in their backyard. And meanwhile, our schools are closed. And maybe in last spring, that's somewhat acceptable because nobody really knew when it was just starting. But the same thing was happening in fall. And if our kids are not able to go to school full days and you're blaming the kids for a transmission that's not happening on their watch, and meanwhile, the teachers are out socializing. Our sports have been open, basically full operation with spectators. The outdoor ones, maybe they're not spreading it outdoors, but those kids go back into a locker room and they don't put their masks on because they're teenagers and they just don't do it. And they're spreading it around in their family units, and the parents are going and tailgating. But then during the week, we can't send our kids in 5 days a week because, the little ones. But the little ones aren't doing it. The little ones, the middle schoolers, they're not the ones even doing the socialization after school. We've got high schoolers that are going and hanging out at the malls and doing things they shouldn't be doing. And the little ones are the ones that are losing the most out of all this. They're losing critical years that they're not going to get back, both socially and academically.
Yeah,
and, it's super frustrating.
I'm with you, Allison. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's go to Daniel in Alabama. Daniel, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How you doing, Dan?
Good, thanks.
So I think you've got this thing wrong, but I'll start by agreeing with your basic premise that we're close to the end, and we do have to find a better balance, and it can't be just black or white. We've got to learn how to strike that balance better in all facets of our country. But it's not the teachers' unions, and the reason why I say that is, look, a year ago when this thing hit us, none of us were prepared. None of us knew what it was or how to deal with it.
Yep.
And so schools shut down, and for good reason, because you had to err on the side of caution then.
I'm not talking about then. I'm talking about in the last.
Go ahead. Yeah, I'm with you. So they've had a year from then to now. Now, where I think the problem is, and I happen to live in an area where schools are open 100%. The kids still have a virtual option, but anyone who wants to go to school can go to school full time. Mm-hmm. But the schools failed miserably in that in a year they still haven't figured out how to do online education to a reasonable degree of competency. And it's not something new. I understand that high schools and elementary schools haven't had to do this before, but colleges have been offering at least some, if not full, online education for years and years, at least a decade. Mm-hmm. Schools made no real effort to learn how to do it better. It's unconscionable that by the time schools were set to open in the fall, that it's like they were all still just sitting there, holding their breath, hoping that there would be a cure, hoping that there would be, some sort of a vaccine or something that would, someone wave a magic wand and make the problem go away. Mm-hmm. And that was nonsense. They should have been spending the entire summer and even before that learning how to do it right and launching a reasonable facsimile of an online education system for the fall. So that's where the failure comes in, and I lay that at the feet of the school systems and of the teachers' unions, because I think one of the problems with unions in this country right now is that it's just about we're fighting for benefits, we're fighting for pay, we're fighting for, whatever the teachers say they want. But they should be equal partners in coming up with solutions to the problems that are faced by schools.
Yep, well said. Daniel, thank you. Take a quick break. Come back with more of your calls. I got no guest because this is one of these topics where you guys are going to know as much, if not a lot more about it than I will. Coming right back in a moment.
Welcome back to the Dan Abrams Show on POTUS, Sirius XM Channel 124, and whenever you want on the Sirius XM app. Just search Dan Abrams.
Talking about a bipartisan group of governors around the country who are muscling the teachers' unions to ensure that schools are reopened. I've been talking about some of my personal experiences, but also reading from a Brookings Institute study that has made clear that teachers' unions with lengthier collective bargaining agreements have been less likely to go back for in-person learning. Let's go to Becky in Iowa. Becky, hi. How you doing?
Oh, good. Thanks for taking my phone call. Sure. I have been a support staff person. I have been involved in unions for 30 years, and I've recently retired. And I think sometimes you paint unions with too wide of a stroke. NEA is the big national union. Then our state, Iowa, has ISEA, which is Iowa State Education Association. And we can't strike in the state of Iowa because when they agreed to let us have collective bargaining, they said you do not have the right to strike. So we don't have that much power. It's down, we work collaboratively with our school board, and our governor just wrote into law that everyone has to be in school, no exceptions at all. And she's kind of like a dictator on some of the stuff that's going on in Iowa right now. But it's not all that bad. My opinion is that the thing they missed out on was teachers, if they wanted this economy to get back going, if they want parents to get back at work, teachers should be number one right behind nurses in getting their shots.
Yeah,
because
I agree
if they
with that.
got their shots, then the schools could open. And in Iowa, until our governor just signed that away, because I still get all the communications from the unions, is that school districts had the right to require every teacher to get a shot. And I think these teachers want to come back to work too, but not until they have shots. And just right now in Iowa is when they're saying that they can get shots. It's ridiculous. They should have been number one in line, and schools would have gotten back open.
Yeah, look, I think that's a fair point. It doesn't, in my view, address the broader issue. And I understand you're saying that in Iowa, I guess the teachers' unions don't have. In New York City, for example, the teachers' unions have way too much power, in my view. But Becky, thank you. Appreciate it. Let's go to Carrie in Rhode Island. Hey, Carrie, how you doing?
Dan, it's a complete pleasure to speak to you. And if your father ever wants to go out with a very adorable German girl from Rhode Island, I'd love to take him out to dinner because I could listen to that man talk every single day of the week and twice on Sunday.
All right, you know what?
I have his book and I love him. It's
all right,
fabulous.
hey
I've
Sam.
read it a million times.
Sam Goldberg, cut that clip for me. I'm going to send it to my dad. Go ahead, Carrie.
It was on before I was like, I could listen to this man all day long. He said it. Okay, I don't have any kids, so I don't worry about that. But let's call a spade a spade. They don't want to go to school. They don't want to go back to work. Okay, it's very wonderful. All my friends who don't have to go to school anymore, you can sit in bed. You wake up at 8:25, and boom, you turn on your computer in your bed in your bunny slippers at 8:30, and there you go. I mean, they don't want to go to work. Being a barista at Starbucks or working at Walmart is more dangerous, in my mind, from a COVID perspective, than going into a classroom of children that is a controlled environment. I mean, is John Gotti running the teachers union? Why do they have this much control? Go to work. Why are we paying them? Stop paying them. You don't pay them, then they'll go to work. Like, there's too much control. And that woman that just spoke, they need shots. Okay. But then they say, they got their shot, and then it was something else. we need HEPA filters. I need Purell every 2 feet. I need this. I need that. I come on. Just go to work. You don't want to go to work. And quite frankly, that guy that called in that said he was a teacher sounded insane. It sounds like wherever he's working, he's got a carbon monoxide leak. He sounds nutty. Oh, we can't go because of that. It didn't even make any sense. Go
Carrie,
to work.
Carrie, thank you. I'm going to warn my dad before he goes out with you that you might have something to say. I appreciate it. Thank you, Carrie. Let's go to John in Oklahoma. John, how you doing? What's going on?
Very good, Dan. It is a pleasure to talk to you. I am a traveling salesman all over Oklahoma, and I tune into you every day. I enjoy your show.
Oh, thank you very much.
And I just wanted to say I do side with the teachers. Part of the reason is because my parents were teachers. I used to date a teacher here in Oklahoma, and I do have a science degree. I've taken courses in immunology, microbiology, and I'm always going to go with the Faucis of the world. I think that teachers should, especially if they're middle age on up, they're more susceptible to have a serious case of COVID, and they should not be put in that environment until they've been vaccinated.
But what about the fact that there's been no evidence that schools are a breeding ground for the disease?
They're not been so much the breeding grounds that they thought is in terms of bringing them back into the families at home. But as far as being a teacher that's, say, 50 years old, being forced to go back to work, possibly having asthma or some other type of comorbidity.
What about if you work? But wait, what if you work, as the woman just said? What if you work at Walmart, or what if you work at an airline, or what if you work, at the variety of other places where you can't work from home? You're a cop or you're a firefighter, or whatever it is. I mean, why is it that teachers who serve such an essential role get to, play by different rules?
Because I think they're very important to society. And
they are.
I tell you, at least where I live here in Oklahoma, they are way underpaid. I dated a girl with a master's degree. She had several years teaching experience. I used to go shopping with her to buy supplies for her students. She was salaried at $32,000.
Look, let's agree.
Year.
I'm with you on that. I am 100% with you on that. That you want to ask me one profession where people need to be paid more across the board. It's teachers, just because of how important they are. But that's a separate issue. It's not entirely separate, but it's somewhat separate from what I'm talking about, which is about the fact that the unions, and again, I'm not talking about individual teachers, because I think that the people who go into teaching so overwhelmingly do it for the right reasons, and so overwhelmingly are good at what they do, and are so important, that I am not in any way, shape, or form attacking the people who I think are the fabric of our future. I am attacking the unions who have, in my view, too much control in many areas, where I'm from in New York City in particular. But again, this is why I'm talking to all of you about this, because, so many of you have more experience in this than do I. So that's what's really important here. John, thank you for the call. Let's go to CJ in Texas. CJ, what's going on?
Hi, I love the show as usual. I've got some medical experience, and my mother was a teacher, my sister was a teacher, and I would point out that, medically speaking, the scientific picture is a bit more nuanced than you would suggest. The studies do suggest that there's less transmission than you would otherwise think, but I think the emphasis is on suggest. And the second part of that would be between students. I don't know that the studies are suggestive that the transmission is less to adults. And, granted, the medical profession, as you mentioned earlier, tends to be more conservative. And I would suggest also that the teaching profession tends to be conservative with the small c in terms of their views. And so I think some caution is warranted here. I will tell you this. Whenever I did my rotations in the peds clinic, I would get sick just about every single time with respiratory infection from the kids. Now, granted, that's different than a school situation, but I mean, just in my personal experience,
right? But that's like when President Trump was saying it's the same as the virus, right? Like we have to look at what we know about this, and we have to treat it, we have to look at it, examine it, and use the science in terms of what we know to move forward. Thank you for the call. Appreciate it. Let's go to Matt in Houston. Matt, how you doing? What's going on?
Hey, Dan, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Hey, Marie from Delaware stole all my thunder, so I was basically going to say the same thing. Here in Texas, since we don't have a state income tax, we have property taxes, and we actually homeschool our daughters. But the school district that we're in, they actually increased taxes this year, and we are, in my house, our tax liability is about $7,000 a year, and when we don't send kids to school, which is our right, so that's not a big deal. But I also own a business, and one of the ladies that works with me brings her kids to work whenever the school is out, and so as they're doing remote learning, they're done by like 11 o'clock in the morning. So, I think if you want to get the teachers back in school, you probably have to threaten the districts have to threaten to furlough them or cut their pay rate. That's really the only thing that's going to get them back in the classes. Everybody else has to work, and the teachers should be no different. And I respect the heck out of teachers, but they can, if you have the option to get paid and stay at home or paid and go to work. Well, I think most people are going to stay at home. So,
all right, Matt. Thank you. I appreciate the call. Let's go to Jeremy in California. Jeremy, how you doing? What's going on? Jeremy, you there?
I apologize. I was on mute.
Hey.
Thank you, Dan. Hey, appreciate the show. Hey, one thing I'm a health and safety professional. My wife's a teacher. I've got 3 kids, elementary school age. And the gentleman earlier saying that he's not going to go back until it's safe. As a health and safety professional, safe is not the word to use. It should be described in terms of risk. That's right. Because is 99.9% is that safe?
Right, you're exactly right.
This goes to the whole argument about how people view 0.5% being low versus 2.2 million people being a lot in terms of how many people can die from COVID. Mm-hmm. It's people talk about the same things, but they don't get on the same page with each other. So we can't use the term safe. It's a terrible term.
You're right. It's a good point. It is a very good point that it is always going to be about a cost-benefit analysis, a risk analysis, whatever you want to call it, in terms of when it's worth. And the problem is that from very often from the teachers' union's perspective, it's the demand is that the number be in the 99 high percentage in terms of quote unquote safety, and I think that's part of the problem. Jeremy, thank you. Good point. Take a break. Come right back with more of your calls in a moment. Tom in Virginia. Tom, how you doing? What's going on?
Pretty good. Hey, I got 2 points. One is the fact that, I think people are missing a point on this show a little bit. They keep talking about the teachers and their unwillingness to go back to school and that. I think part of your topic it really is about the teachers' unions themselves and the power that they wield. And in the fashion that you see in a lot of these states where they're saying until social justice is corrected throughout the state or voter ID laws are changed or something like that, they're not going to go back to school. That is a political type of leverage they're using. And they're making our kids suffer in the meantime. It has nothing to do with them going back to school.
Well, anyone who's saying that is at a separate level. That's a separate level of bad in my view. But that's even worse than what I'm talking about. So thank you, appreciate it, Tom. Let's go let's go to John in New York. John, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, thanks.
So I'm a teacher in New York City. I'm a member of the UFT, and I think I'm in a kind of a unique situation. I can see it from both sides. We had a huge last year opt-out period where anyone and their mother who could get a medical exemption to stay out, but I know a lot of teachers who stayed in. When it comes to going back, I don't think you're going to find one teacher who doesn't want to go back. And I can get your point where you say that the unions are kind of fighting too hard. But I think at the same time, here in New York City, the DOE, as we call it, the Department of Education, has given us very little guidance on how to come back. We've gotten these
But wait a sec.
Yes,
but wait a sec. And therefore, you shouldn't have to come back because the Department of Education isn't providing enough. I mean, I'm not defending the Department of Education, but
no, maybe I said that wrong. That's not exactly what I meant. But at the same time, it's that you kind of. No, I think actually you probably got it. That's not what I meant, but that is, I guess, what you could take from it. And now I'm getting my tongue tied here. But no, it's just that. Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe Mulgrew and the UFT are wielding a little bit too much power, but I'd rather have too much than not enough. Because then when I heard earlier in the show that that young lady from Georgia says that their union doesn't have the right to strike, I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. Then what's the point of the union?
Right.
There's no collective bargaining happening.
My guess is it's, there's some provision that is intended to prevent them from striking, but, again, that becomes like, a question of what happens if they do, right? What, everyone's going to get fired? Like the air traffic controllers in the 1980s with Ronald Reagan. Anyway, John, thank you. Appreciate it. Let's go to Marty in Pennsylvania. Hey, Marty, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, thanks. What's up? What do you got?
Yeah, so, just on the teachers union thing, I mean, you couldn't be more right about the having too much power. I'm in a town called Westchester, Pennsylvania. And in the beginning of the year, I actually got the principal of my daughter's school to admit to me that they offered training that was not required because the teachers union would not require it for them. So basically, they had all this training for online education that was available to them that over the summer they didn't take advantage of. And, by the way, from March until May last year, they used the free Zoom classes, which could only be up to, I think it was 43 minutes per day. So not only did our kids not get much instruction at all for almost 3 months last year, but the teachers still were paid for that time. The teachers union prevented them from having to be forced to be trained for that, online training. So it wasn't some teachers took advantage of it.
Yeah. All right, Marty, you're breaking up. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's go to Brian in Virginia. Brian, how you doing? What's up?
Good, Dan. Thank you. My question is, it regards the correlation between the length of contracts and the delay in returning. Mm-hmm. And was it a nationwide study of all schools that includes union, right to work states, where I believe you'll find that the contracts tend to be shorter.
I'll read you.
And also
I'll read you what it was. This is from the Brookings Institute. With a team of co-authors, I tracked school reopening decisions throughout the fall of 2020 semester in 250 of the largest school districts across the country to understand just how much influence teachers' unions had on these decisions. We measured teachers' unions' power in two ways. The first captures a more fixed measure of power and is built up over a longer period of time, the length of collective bargaining agreements. The second is a shorter-term measure, one that captures the reactionary power of teachers' unions to school reopening decisions.
Okay, all right. I'm not sure if that answered my question or not, and it may not be a valid question. I just would have some concern if varying on the states, and there are population density issues where you tend to have in states where you are more unionized. I am a teacher. I am a member of a union. I teach in Pennsylvania. I'm traveling today. And I know that, while we had concerns, we were also very eager to work. We were, I have put in probably, 10 to 15 hours extra a week while we were virtual versus what I'm doing since we've returned. And even there, there's still a lot of extra just in catching up. But I just don't see this power being wielded in the way that maybe that study suggests that it is.
All right, Brian, thank you. This is why I say, look, I'm not going to claim, as you guys know, I'll claim to be an expert on a lot of things. No, I'll weigh in on a lot of things. and I'm weighing in on this, but I'm not an expert, which is why I asked for a lot of you to call in, which is why you guys are helping me learn about this topic. Let's go to Jim in Connecticut. Jim, how you doing? What's going on?
Hey, Dan, how are you doing? First time, long time.
Thank you.
It's funny. I hear all these arguments about the union as the teachers' union as it's some sort of large monolith. Our town here in Connecticut has been hybrid since the beginning of the school year, and K through fifth grade have been in person full time since the beginning of March, or since mid-March for third through fifth grade. And I feel like the union, and I'm not a huge union guy per se, but I feel like the union worked with the school district, and they're both in a very difficult position because as soon as the kids started going back, the complaints started when the transmission rate started going up. Mm-hmm. And now everybody's being accused of not being transparent and that they're not telling everyone the full story. And it's the people that were complaining before that the kids weren't being allowed back in now have the new thing to complain about.
Well, look,
and
there's no doubt.
They're just in a tough spot.
Right. The teachers are definitely in a tough spot. I mean, and there's no doubt that, I wouldn't want to have to deal with certain parents all the time, right? I will guarantee you that in every school district, there are the problem parents, right, who will complain no matter what. But again, that doesn't change the reality of the fact that the teachers' unions are, very powerful. And I think this study that I'm talking about is important. Thank you. Let's go, Laura. Laura in California. Laura, I've got a minute. What do you got?
Hi, there's a story out about a bar that was open and 650 kids aren't in school because of it. 46 people got sick. It was in Illinois. And the person that went to the bar had tested positive the day before. What can be done about people like that? Isn't it against the law to infect people with something like this?
So it's not against the law per se. It's certainly against, I'm sure it is against whatever, ordinance, et cetera. But here's the thing. This would be silly.